So a lot of the changes that we made to the cab really focus on upfit, ergonomics, and HMI and productivity. And so, you know, I'll talk a little bit about the controls piece of it, the different things that the driver interfaces with, and then I'll talk also a little bit about the electrical architecture that we've updated on this product as well. And so I'll start over here on the A panel here in the drive, immediately in front of the driver. We made some changes to the gauges. We made them larger and easier to read, so it's more of a minor update, but also one that we feel makes a big difference to the driver. We also have incorporated the information display that you see here. We had a previous generation that was over on the B panel. We've moved that in between the steering wheel and right above the gauges to make it a little bit easier to read and a little safer to use, where you know it's immediately in your line of sight. That information display includes your basic vehicle functions and settings, trip display, fuel economy information, and diagnostics for engine and powertrain. One of the other things that you'll notice that we've changed here is the steering wheel and the controls on the steering column, and we did this for a number of reasons. For the most part, you know, there are steering wheel control options that are optional on a lot of other OEMs. We think that given the number of controls that drivers are using these days and how they interface with the vehicle, it's best to keep their hands on the wheel. So we make steering wheel controls standard. Those controls on the left-hand side, you'll see, change the display in the center of the gauges here, so you can control all of that via this. There's a small button on the steering wheel that also interrupts your high beams. So if you hold that down, it'll cut off high beams. If you're heading into oncoming traffic, you want to do that temporarily, then you can do that over here. On the right-hand side, we have cruise control, Bluetooth call functions, as well as a hazard indicator button that if you press that, you can get the flashers on the rear of the vehicle, the front, basically all your indicator lights. That's a pretty frequently used feature when you're driving on the highway, climbing a steep grade. You want to do that. So all of that is readily available here. What you'll notice when you look below here, you see the turn signal indicators and transmission controls. We've incorporated a symmetrical stock design here that's consistent on both sides. It's really easy to use. If you have smaller hands, you can reach them pretty easily, so it's designed to be pretty ergonomic regardless of your stature. On the left-hand side, you'll see here we have headlights, wipers, and turn signals all incorporated into that stock. Just a basic standard safety feature is the activation of your headlights if you have wipers. So we believe in the passive safety of that. On the right-hand side, you'll see we have engine brake functions that are activated via this stock. So you've got low, medium, and high, and you can access that really easily. You don't have to reach down to the dash to control the engine brake function, which is pretty important in adverse conditions where you want to have maximum control. If you have an ultra shift or automated or the DT12 transmission, then you have the controls for shifting functions on here as well. It's a slightly different design between the ultra shift models and the DT12 transmission, but the basic functionality is the same there, so you get that regardless of transmission model that you have. And then another thing that I wanted to point out that isn't immediately shown here, but we have on a manual transmission, we have an electronically controlled hydraulic clutch, and that's a new feature for us in this model as well. It not only makes a self-adjusting mechanism, so you don't have to worry about messing around with mechanical linkages, but it also is easier to surface and reduces the pedal effort by about half. So it's a significant improvement in the overall ergonomics of the driver package. On the B panel, we've made several changes. We've added a bank of about 6 3-position optional switches that are available to be spec'd in a vehicle. Those switches are pre-wired to to the fuse panel and this connection point back here, which I'll talk about a little bit for body upfit. And so you can order that in the B panel here. Right now there's only 2 that you see shown here, but you can have, again, up to 6. On the top of the dash, we know vocational vehicles, they love to install various computers, telematics. So we have a built-in interface up at the top of the dash where you can pre-wire 1939 connections and also have mounting provisions and several optional brackets that we offer that you can order straight from the factory, so that when the bodybuilder gets it, they can just bolt it right up and make the connections. You don't have to drill holes in the dash and do that sort of thing where you see wires kind of popping under seams and the like. We also have some additional optional USB ports that we've added down below. So that kind of wraps up just some of the general updates that we've done immediately to the driver. What's less immediately observed is the architectural changes that we've made to the electrical system. And one of the things that we're showing over here is this panel has been removed from the right-hand side of the dash, and it shows a new auxiliary PDM that we have installed. That's a new system that really enhances the flexibility and the capabilities of the electrical system. And what I mean by that is that you now have additional power controls and capabilities for integration with bodybuilders. So if you want to add additional 30 amp connections, powertrain controls, chassis features. If you have a pretty complex body and you need a lot of power support for that, a lot of ground support, then Aaron's going to talk a little bit about that when we get to the chassis. But this really enables up to about 300 amps of additional capacity outside of just the standard truck electrical system. So it's pretty flexible from a bodybuilder standpoint. It's a newer design that uses a circuit board as opposed to separate switches and relays, and that system is significantly more reliable and repeatable from a manufacturing standpoint. So the quality is better there, the consistency is better, the reliability is there. In order to interface with the new electrical architecture, we've come up with bodybuilder connections here, and this is significant. You'll see we have 3 ported connections here with Deutsch connectors on them. The top one that you see is connections to powertrain. The center is significant power, so this is where you can get up to 530 amp power lines here, and then the bottom one is for chassis connections. So when you tie into this connector, it directly connects to the PDM and to the switches that are factory installed. So when you order these optional switches, you have all of the connections here via this Deutsch connector. And then the bodybuilder orders the vehicle, it shows up at their facility, they put the body on there, and then they mount the connections directly to here. And to do that, there's a standard pass-through in the floor, so you don't have to drill holes in the back of a cab in order to make that connection. It's all readily available, and here you see most of the modern vocational products these days have a big center console here, and they might have controls. So we've specifically located this so that it's a clean routing from that to the connections and under, without the need to modify the body. That I think for the most part sums it up in here. And then the last thing that I wanted to point out, which you see above me, is the 40-inch vocational sleeper that we've added to the 4700 product line. So previously available in the 5700 and the 4900. It's now available in what we call a low height sleeper and an ultra low. The ultra low being the same height as the top of the forward day cab, and that's ideal for some of the vocational sleeper applications like cranes, anything that really has overhead components. The sleeper is extremely lightweight. It's about 380. So it's definitely a good option for bulk haulers, like you can see over there, as well as a lot of vocational applications where you need hours of service.